The latest news on the trail, the way I see it, is USC just did that cartoon thing where you step on a rake and it whacks you in the face.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, and thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth, and all the craziness that ensues. Indiana's expectations next year. What do we make of those? Where do they fit into the Big Ten? Colorado added another offensive lineman. That is all on today's show. But first, we start with the Trojans. Big piece of recruiting news yesterday. Five-star number one offensive tackle Jackson Cantwell committed to Miami. And the big piece of news for today's show, five-star number two overall linebacker Xavier Griffin decommitted from USC. And the way it looks to me, with a 30,000-foot view, is USC did this to themselves, and they're clearly okay with it. Now, I understand where they're coming from, and I don't think the sky is falling for USC. Their class is not about to fall off a cliff. This is a pretty huge commitment from two different angles. Number one, USC just lost a premier defensive recruit. And as they have reshaped their image as a program and on the recruiting trail over the last 6 months or so, they've done a masterful job with Chad Bowden, their general manager, that came over from Notre Dame. It's all been really good down there in Los Angeles for the Trojans. One thing that I have noticed going into their second year with defensive coordinator Danton Lynn, who they poached from UCLA, he's really good, is their ability to recruit top defensive talent. Griffin was one of those guys. He'd been committed to USC since July. But the reason I say USC kind of stepped on the rake and did this to themselves, the reports indicate they didn't want him taking visits elsewhere. Now, I'm going to get, I'm sure, at least one, probably more comments about it's about the culture. You have to want to be at USC. You can't be okay. You're taking that way too personally. I get, if from USC standpoint, I understand you want people who want to be at USC and they don't want to maybe go elsewhere. But because you got all principled, essentially, you have cost yourself the opportunity to have one of the most talented defensive recruits since Lincoln Riley's been there. I think Jakeem Stewart, the true freshman, who is huge, by the way, and I would think plays for USC somewhere along the defensive line this year just because he's such a talented guy. He's certainly in that class. I think Elbert Hill, the corner is a really good player. They've got plenty of other options, sure, if you're just looking at overall defensive talent. But Xavier Griffin was the top guy. By the way, this USC recruiting class still has 27 players, should still be expected to get well over 30. And they still have the number one class in the country according to multiple services. That's how insane the recruiting class is. But they lost a receiver the other day, and then Griffin decommitted, and that's much bigger news because you went out and said, no, we don't want you taking visits elsewhere. If you don't want to be here, then you don't. Just because a guy is taking visits elsewhere doesn't mean he doesn't want to be at USC. He's been committed for a long time. I don't know all the details of what those visits are going to entail. Yeah, they're going to include pitches from other schools. I know that for certain. They're going to say, hey, we'll give you this. Hey, we'll give you that. Maybe they're worried about other schools upping the NIL offer and USC didn't want to do that, which would be strange. It would be strange. That is me speculating here because USC's NIL commitment has been one of, not the only, but one of the driving forces behind their revolution or their evolution on the recruiting front. And I don't begrudge them for that, by the way, or as I talked about yesterday with Miami, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing if you are a USC fan, that they're not behind in that realm, whereas before, kind of seemed like they might have been. But why are you worried about that? I think this is a guy who is far too talented to let just, no, we want to only have guys that are not taking visits elsewhere. Like, That's just strange. I think it'd be strange for any recruit. I think especially when you're talking about a top 20, 25 player in the class, number 2 overall linebacker, according to 24/7 Sports. He's a 5-star kid, 6'3", 200 pounds, 24/7 has crystal balled him to Georgia. He's going to take visits reportedly to Georgia, Alabama, Texas, and Florida State. I believe that Florida State visit is scheduled for June 15th. So now one of the biggest players available is not going to USC. Do you think you're getting him back after that? Doesn't seem that way. Doesn't seem like a Jared Curtis situation, number 1 quarterback who decommitted from Georgia, opened up his recruitment, entertained the idea of going to Oregon, ultimately landed back on Georgia. Kind of seems like USC saying, no, we don't want... Like, USC has changed the recruiting significantly. You haven't recruited so well in the last couple of cycles. You can just afford, especially on defense, that you can just say, yeah, let's take one of the best linebacker prospects of the last couple of years. Nah, I don't need him. Don't need him because he's going to take visits elsewhere. Visits look like fun. That could be all it is. No, I'm sure it's not. If USC was willing to say, yeah, we don't want you to take a visit, okay, then you go ahead and decommit, open it back up fully. If that's the way this really went down, then maybe there's more to it. Maybe I'm missing a detail in there. I just didn't like the way that it looked. That USC said, if you're committed to USC, a verbal commitment, unless a kid shuts down his recruitment, maybe we need to come up with a different term for it. That's fine. But in the meantime, let's just see it for what it is. It's a statement of who's in the lead. And by the way, most kids don't flip. Decommitments, hence why I'm talking about it on the show, get plenty of attention, get plenty of buzz, and oh my gosh, I can't believe this kid. And it can cycle in people's heads, or it can circulate, I should say, to the point where they think, oh, these kids, they never stay committed. They're just going to flip. Like, no, most are still going to stay. Okay? A week ago at this time, USC had 29 commits. Now they have 27. Oh no. Oh, the horror for USC. So I don't think that their recruiting class is about to crater. I don't think they're about to fall out of the top 5. They're still going to have one of the best classes in this upcoming cycle. I just think they made a mistake here. If this is truly how it all went down, and I'm just reacting to information that we all have to the situation at hand, that USC said, we don't want you taking visits elsewhere. Don't be a USC commit. We'll look elsewhere. You don't have that luxury. You're not Georgia. You're not Alabama in the Saban years. When you have a kid like this who has wanted to be a Trojan seemingly for the past several months, you do whatever it takes. You just do. So, kid is incredibly talented. 6'3", 200, incredibly rangy. He can come off the edge as a tremendous blitzer, sideline to sideline linebacker. His athleticism pops off the screen when you watch his film. He's not a 5-star by accident, but I think USC made a mistake. Time will tell. Maybe one day we'll look back and go, remember when they lost Xavier Griffin? Well, his career didn't end up working out. I don't know, if he winds up at Georgia, he could be pretty good. He could. I'm just throwing it out there as a possibility. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below, all that good stuff. What do we expect from Indiana? Where do they even fit into the Big Ten? First, this episode brought to you by Wayfair. The days, they're getting longer. Weather's warming up. And people are spending more time outside, which means it's the perfect time to refresh your outdoor space. Whether you're working with a big backyard or small balcony, Wayfair has everything you need to make it feel more like you. Wayfair's massive selection of outdoor essentials makes it easy to transform any space into your ideal summer setup. From comfy conversation sets to sleek dining tables and outdoor decor, they've got it all, and at prices that fit your budget. So if you've got any sort of space that you want to feel comfortable, you want to look good, and you want to get quality stuff at a good price, Wayfair is indeed the place to go. And the delivery is free and hassle-free, even for the big stuff. Shop a huge selection of outdoor furniture online this summer. Get outside with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair. Every style, every home. So I am, of course, the host of this show, but sometimes I'm a guest on other shows, as I was For Jacob Goins Show, Locked On Hoosiers, we talked about Indiana and Big Ten power rankings. You bet I have that team that you won't put at number one as number one.
All right, final segment here of a Locked On crossover, Indiana Hoosiers, college football, Locked On Hoosiers, Locked On college football. I'm Jacob Goins. He is Spencer McLaughlin. And we started looking at Big Ten power rankings heading into 2025. Now, I'm curious, Spencer, do you subscribe to the idea of washing out everything that happened a year ago and just looking at what to expect in 2025? Or do you let that kind of trickle into your power rankings?
Well, it depends on how similar a team is going to be from the prior year. I mean, Ohio State and Oregon are incredibly talented rosters. They are not the same teams.
Yeah.
They just had, I think, a combined 24 players drafted. Oregon just set a record with 10 players drafted. That's a record for their school. I think Ohio State had like 14 selected total. So that's a lot. And by the way, the number of players you lost is not limited to the guys that got drafted. Those were just the best players that got drafted. Oregon is replacing a quarterback, a running back, 2 tight ends, 4 offensive linemen, 3 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, and 6 members of the secondary.
You're really knowledgeable about them.
Yeah, I am indeed. I got a guy.
How many players is Purdue replacing?
Unimportant.
For their sake, I hope all.
Oh, well, they're replacing a lot. Barry Odom is turning things over. That's kind of the idea. But for Ohio State, you lost 3 guys along the defensive line. You lost, I think, 2 linebackers, a couple members of the secondary, a receiver who was selected, was it late in the first round, early second, Emeka Ibuka, and both your running backs and your quarterback and several members of your offensive line.
Yeah,
that's a lot. A lot. I think it matters when you're evaluating the quality of a coaching staff to say, what did they do the prior year? Like, if I were to grade total coaching jobs last year in the Big Ten, Indiana would be up there. Like, certainly what Dan Lanning did at Oregon winning the Big Ten, very impressive. What Ryan Day did winning national championship, very impressive. They also have the talent rosters on paper to do that. Indiana shouldn't have been 11-1 and as dominant as they were. So I think you have to grade the staff very highly after what they did a year ago. But if we're talking power rankings here, my number one team is Penn State. There is no way. Here's the crazy thing. I know it sounds wild, Jacob. It does. It feels wrong. It's just like, oh, it's James Franklin.
It definitely feels wrong.
It feels wrong. But if I were to create a graphic or write out a tweet thread or anything, and I gave you Team A, Team B, and Team C,
okay,
I guarantee you all would pick Penn State. I guarantee it. There is no way, unless you knew what the discussion was and you wanted to pick Ohio State or Oregon just to be contrarian. But you would not, if you just looked objectively at all of this, you would not pick Ohio State or Oregon. You would pick Penn State. This is a school that was team school, refer to it however you want. This is a team that is returning its head coach and its offensive coordinator, who was coveted for head coaching jobs, but wanted to stay as the OC for Penn State during the run. And by the way, that job was West Virginia. He would have been the West Virginia head coach, not Rich Rodriguez, but he decided, no, I want to stay with Penn State. So you bring back...
That's just for the story of college football. Rich Rod, baby.
Yeah, it is. I know. I'm glad Rich Rod is back at West Virginia. But you bring back one of the 5 best, maybe one of the 3 best offensive coordinators in all of college football. You have a team that has a top 10, I believe, returning production metric in all of college football. You have a 2026 projected top 10 pick at quarterback. You have 2 running backs. You return 4 starters along the offensive line. And you just brought in the defensive coordinator from Team B in this hypothetical, who was instrumental to winning a national championship. There is no way. You went out and brought in an all-conference receiver from Syracuse to help fill a void left by receivers that were substandard a year ago. Oh, and you brought in a guy from USC who was a great player for the Trojans last season. Oh, and you brought in a guy from Troy who could be Tez Johnson round 2.
Okay, Penn State's good. Fine, they're good.
Yeah, they should be. They should be great.
They should be, but James Franklin's still their head coach. So I assume that it's going to be Penn State 1 for you, Ohio State 2, Oregon 3.
Yeah.
Who's your 4th? And tell me why Indiana's 5.
I got this written down.
I'm so proud of you.
Want to make sure I stay consistent here. I got my.
I'm proud of you.
I got my notes.
Yeah. You're
not gonna believe. I have Indiana 5th.
I guessed it right. Tell me why. Tell me why they're 5th as we
I have Indiana 5th because of the coaching staff and because I do like some of their portal moves.
Okay.
I in particular Pat Coogan. I think Mendoza is solid, but this is more faith in the coaching staff and the continuity that they have maintained. Coaching continuity is a hard thing to find, and I've been consistent about this on my show for a very, very long time. That if you have coaching continuity, one of the reasons that I'm leaning towards my preseason national title pick being Clemson, they return their offensive coordinator, quarterback, and coach for a 3rd straight year. Nobody else in college football can say that. Not that it is a Power 4 school. There is not another Power 4 school in the country who has the same combination of those 3 guys, which I value, and is trying to win a national championship. I don't think that it exists out there. But who do you think my 4th team is? Power rated in the Big Ten.
That's such a good. If you say,
I'll give you a hint. They also have a high level of returning production.
If you tell me, like other people I've seen, that it's Illinois, I'm going to scream.
All right, well then go ahead and scream because it's Illinois.
Oh no,
it's Illinois.
Oh,
what do you not like? They lost the running back to Georgia, Josh McCray. All right, don't love that, but running backs far more replaceable than other spots. I've got a veteran quarterback in Luke Altmaier. I've got Brett Bielema, who just put up a 10-win season, by the way, and exclamation pointed it with a win over the SEC. Remember that discussion we all had about the playoff, and I'd put in 9-3 South Carolina over 11-1 Indiana. Schedule's garbage, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's a team that Illinois beat in their bowl game, and a lot of that team is back. I believe the Illini are top 5 nationally in returning production. And I like Luke Altmaier. He's not incredible, but he's more proven than most of the other quarterbacks in the Big Ten. Yeah. It's like if you do a Big Ten power ranking of quarterbacks, Jacob, you wind up putting Drew Aller number 1 because everywhere, unless you're going to put Luke Altmaier number 1, you can't look at Dylan Raiola and say he's number 1. You can't put Bryce Underwood right there. You can't.
Mendoza's up there though. I think Mendoza needs to be up there.
Yeah, he's solid. You're not putting him number 1.
No, not yet. Not yet.
That Kurt Signetti confidence is contagious, isn't
it? It's almost sickening. Yeah, it's almost like it's a drug, right? And how it's not supposed to do that, but hey, that's what's happening here. Okay, so you got Indiana at 5. That's good enough. That means, look, Signetti and the Hoosiers, good expectations and solid power ranking, and a lot of good portal additions. Indiana's poised for another good season. All they have to do is compete for a college football playoff. And if they compete, not saying they have to make it, just compete, everything will be fine in 2025. That'll at least get us to basketball season where we have a new head coach and everything will be just fine.
Always a fun time. Always a fun time on this show. And guess what? The fun times roll along. We're going to Boulder because they did it again. Sky blue. Water makes things wet. Water itself, though, not wet. At least that's how I see it. Kevin Borba, Locked On Buffs, is here because Colorado's added another transfer in the least shocking piece of news, of course, across the Big 12. But it's along the offensive line here, Kevin. And I think anytime you make an effort to bolster the trenches since Deion Sanders got there, that's the right thing to do. It's been a problem. But now you look around and go, wait a minute. They got Xavier Hill from Memphis. You got Jordan Seaton back for his 2nd year. That's a former 5-star. You bring in another veteran here. Tell us about him first, and then we'll get to the impact on that Buffs unit up front.
Yeah, so they brought in Andre Roy Jr. I believe that's how you say his last name, Roye, for those of you who are spelling and phonetical experts at home. He's a guy that played at Maryland, played over 400-something snaps, only allowed 1 career sack, started, I think it was 7 or 8 games this past year for the Terrapins, and again, you bring in a Big Ten/SEC guy, which has kind of been Colorado's calling card this entire offseason of finding big offensive linemen who have played and have experienced in the SEC or Big Ten. And I think they're just trying to figure out what combination can work. And I think Andre Roy will add to a very interesting right tackle battle because there's a lot of right tackle names in the mix now.
Right tackle battle for a guy who did start for Maryland last year. Why do you think he came to the Buffs if he's not guaranteed to start?
Well, for one, I think playing for Deion Sanders is attractive, right? I think there's that. I also think Deion Sanders and Colorado are sort of advertising like, hey, come be the solution. And I think for a lot of guys, that is enticing, right? He only started, or I think he started 7 or 8 games. So he wasn't starting every game at Maryland, right? So I think he has the opportunity to start. Maybe they'll kick him inside if he doesn't win the right tackle battle. I don't know if that's in his calling cards. But I do think there's an appeal to play for Colorado and be a part of something. And he has multiple years of eligibility. So if it doesn't happen this year, it could happen next year or 2026.
Do you think that if he does wind up starting, it's an upgrade over what Colorado had at that position last year?
Yeah, I said on my show countless times that no one from last year's offensive line outside of Jordan Seaton and Cash Cleveland, who now plays for Texas Tech, should start again. Right, I don't think any of those guys were the answer. I think they all tried really hard, and I'm not trying to take away from them. But again, Colorado gave up. Shedeur Sanders was sacked. I don't know the number off the top of my head. He was sacked 90-something times in 2 years, and they had the worst rushing attack in college football. So, unfortunately, I don't think any of those guys were the answer. And so, when you bring in all of these new pieces, I think you have to find a solution somewhere.
There are a lot of guys, we've mentioned a couple, and there are others in the room. And I do think an underrated part of this Colorado offensive line, Jordan Seaton has to take a step forward. I mean, mega talent, of course, probably the biggest high school recruit that Deion Sanders has landed because they are so portal heavy every single year. And I have long wondered and continue to wonder if you can build a high-end offensive line strictly through the portal. They're certainly making a swing at it this year. Xavier Hill was one of the top offensive linemen that moved in either portal cycle, coming from Memphis, where he started for multiple years, graded out really well, has played a couple of different spots. So I think the potential is certainly there. But I think we were saying this a little bit last year, Kevin, right? Where, you brought in some transfers and you had a big-time 5-star, and I think Seaton has to take that step forward, but that's still not the only question mark for this group, right?
Yeah, I think we said this very exact. We had this very exact conversation last year, and I said this last year, and so I'm going to say it again because now I believe it even more. I think this right here is the final attempt at building a line through the portal. I guess you could say. Like, I'm not going to say they're not going to take offensive linemen in the future, but if you really think that they're going to go for a third year straight and have, like, say this offense line doesn't pan out somehow, right? Would you try it again next year? I wouldn't want to try it again next year, right? You'd have 3 sample sizes of like, hey, we've tried to get 4 to 5 offensive linemen to start right away from the portal, and it has not worked out. So I think this unit has potential. I think you were kind of alluding to that earlier. They've brought in 7, right? There's 7 new offensive linemen in the mix from the portal. They all have a common theme. Do you want to guess the common theme before I?
Experience. I'm going to guess experience is the theme.
Experience, and there's a certain. I'll tell you the schools and a little background on each, and you tell me if you notice anything. So Andre Roy, Maryland, 6'6", 294, not the biggest guy of the bunch by any means. Larry Johnson, 6'7", 350.
Hold on. Can we just appreciate what you just factually said? 6'6", 294. He's not that big.
Not the biggest.
He's not the biggest guy they got.
Yeah, and then when you hop to Larry, who's 6'7", 350, it's like, okay, he's tiny. But again, Xavier Hill, 6'4", 320. Monotamini, that's from Memphis. Monotamini, Ole Miss, 6'4", 345. Zylan Chrysler, 6'6", 335, Illinois. Zarian McGill, 6'2", 308 from Louisiana Tech. He was an all-conference center, though. Aki OG is what I call him because I don't want to butcher his last name. 6'4", 315. And that is it. Did you notice anything particular about these fellas?
They're all over 300 pounds.
All over 300 pounds. A lot of them are from the SEC or the Big Ten. And I know the Big 12 wants to see itself as on par with those two conferences. But those two conferences typically have the advantage in the trenches. And I think getting guys who have that sort of makeup and experience could help Colorado maybe reach the next level if it works out.
Yeah, and the next question that pops in my mind when talking about the Buffs offensive line, of course, is who are they blocking for? Kevin, Caden Salter comes over from Liberty, experienced. He regressed this past season, goes to the Buffs to try to restart things. Should have a good array of weapons. I think Colorado's done a good job reloading without Travis Hunter and others like Jimmy Horn from last year's receiving core. But is it going to be Caden Salter? Is Juju Lewis, who, could be seen as not supposed to play this year? He's actually a year ahead of schedule age-wise. And, Ryan Williams played. But he's a receiver, and this guy's a quarterback. So how have you seen those two quarterbacks battling it out through spring football?
Yeah, I think they've both given a lot of reasons as to why they could each start. I think Julian Lewis played pretty well in the spring game. He had some nice moments. I think he probably, if you watch him play or go back and watch a spring ball, I think you'd be shocked to see how quick the ball gets out of his hand. Like he throws a nice ball. I just feel like he looked like a 17-year-old kid during the spring game. And I think throughout the spring practice, from what I was told by people in the building, it's kind of Caden Salter's job to lose. And I assume that would happen, right? He's a 4th or 5th year guy who's started multiple years, was a former blue chip recruit himself, and he has more experience. And he brings a different dynamic to the offense, right? He's a quarterback he's one of the best dual threats in the country. So I think Colorado needs his versatility, and they need his experience. And I think that will sort of win out. And I'm not saying Julian Lewis won't play, but I do think Caden Salter gets a nod when they play Georgia Tech in their opening game.
Just wait for the first time Caden Salter struggles. The downside of recruiting a big-time quarterback is anytime Caden Salter struggles, put in the freshman. Put him in. This guy stinks.
He has especially Juju, right? I'm not going to compare him to Arch Manning because he's not of the same fame by any means, but he does have he's very popular. We'll put it that way. And so if and when Caden Salter struggles, the calls for Juju will be quick, they will be loud, and this Colorado fan base will be divided.
Yeah, just the way you like it for content purposes, right?
I never want to see anyone argue.
Yeah, that would be terrible. Like the Bill Hader meme. Oh, that's terrible. Yeah. Awful. Just terrible. Yeah, Kevin Borba, Locked On Buffs, not awful. No, hopefully you didn't think today's show was awful either. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time, and until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.